Hello, everybody. It always excites me to know that I'm connecting with you through a video. I'm going to spend a little bit of time today reflecting on Easter. I hope you guys had a very happy Easter. I focused on the video on Wednesday about the sin pain and the shame that Jesus bore for us, and how we've never had a time in our lives that we felt bad about something and had a lot of shame that we couldn't take that to Jesus. And Jesus had that times everybody that's ever lived and will live placed on him. And how that pain, and when Jesus turned his back on him, I didn't mean to say Jesus, when God turned his back on him, how painful that was for Jesus. There's another side to the cross, and that is that he did choose the cross for you and for me. Um, he could at any point have said no, and he would not have had to have gone through what he did for us. Another thing I wanted to point out, because I didn't want you to think that I didn't think the physical pain that Jesus went through was very, very tough. I was reminded as I was kind of thinking through Easter and kind of going through the weekend myself of how Jesus was beaten so badly that he was not recognizable as a man. So we see all these pictures of Jesus on the cross, and it looks like pretty much himself, and he has some blood, but that really is not a true picture of what Jesus looked like. If he were hanging on the cross, by what I have read, you couldn't really tell if he was even a man. He was beaten that badly. So I don't want you guys to ever take lightly the physical pain he went through, the sin pain he went through, or the fact that he chose to do that for you and for me. I have a family Bible, and I want you to take a look at it if I can get this to flip. I'm not the best with this, and I don't think I can once I've got it in this mode. But let me see if I can. Okay, let me see if I can just show you these pictures. Okay, this is an old family Bible, and I want you to look at the Lord's Supper. I just think some of these pictures in this Bible are very, very neat. Again, I apologize. I'm going to keep learning as I go through this. I also want you to look at the triumphal entry. This is very beautiful also. You know, this is when Jesus came riding in, and everyone was rooting for him, so to speak. And, you know, just a little time later, you know, he died on the cross. So I wanted you to see that too. Again, sorry if that wasn't very clear. But I wanted to get back. I couldn't go today without talking about Easter just a little bit, because it's so special to me. And knowing that Jesus did what he did for us is just amazing. So I hope you always remember those things as you get older too. But now we are going to go back to chapter 28. And that will be, you will be on page 109. So we're going back to the chapter before Easter. The title of it is Stewardship. And I want to talk to you a little bit about stewardship, being a steward and being an owner. I want to describe that to you and try to help you see that the difference. I'm going to read a couple Bible verses. The first verse I'm going to read is in Psalms, and I want to remind you, where is Psalms found in the Bible? And pretty much the center. If you take your Bible and flip and kind of like put your fingernail usually right in the center and open it up, you typically are right there at it. That's always a good skill for finding Psalms. Okay, Psalms 24:1. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. So the question is, the earth is owned by whom? That would be God or the Lord. And we are just stewards. And that's going to be the word you hear all week, steward, stewardship, stewards. Okay? The definition of a steward is someone who manages and cares for someone else's property. So this world is God's, and we are the stewards. So we are to take care of what He has entrusted us with. So that would mean when you're riding down the road, if you have some trash, hang on to it until you can put it in the trash can. Don't just throw it out on the road. It would mean being cautious to recycle and use the resources that God has given us, thinking about people in the future and using it carefully. Being a good steward also means, and we're going to talk about this in a few days, but I kind of wanted to introduce it a little bit too. Being a good steward of your time, using it wisely, being sure you put Him first, spend time with Him, reading your Bible, praying, memorizing Bible verses, devotions. But I do encourage you to not let your devotions take the place of actually reading the Bible. Because devotions are written by humans and the Bible was inspired by God. And there's a lot of good things in devotions, don't get me wrong, but God just kind of has reminded me that over the years, so I try not to replace the Bible with that if I can. Another thing is so being a good steward of your gifts and your talents. So let's just say that God has, I don't know, I'm just going to use baseball because my boys play a lot of baseball. So let's say that God has gifted you in baseball and you are an amazing player. And one day you go and you play for the Yankees and you're getting interviewed. You're in People Magazine, you're in Sports Illustrated, you're on TV. And I just want to remind you that in those moments, be sure if God gives you a platform for Him, that you always honor Him. I've always told my boys, God will never give you a platform if you're not going to honor it for Him, because this is not about us or not about you. Let's take it down a few notches. That's on a big level. Let's take it down to maybe you're good at playing the piano and they need someone to play the piano at your, maybe at children's church. And you could volunteer to play and use your gifts that God has given you. Maybe it's drawing, maybe it's teaching, maybe it's speaking. There's so many different talents. I'm just trying to think of some that you could use at church. I've always laughed and said years ago when we had a church bell at our church, I could not have rang the bell because I'm always the last one there. And once I'm there, I've already gotten everything done. So I have a really good time hanging out with everybody, and I'm typically one of the last one to leave. So ringing the church bell would be someone who gets up early, someone who's very punctual, and like Ella, for example. She's always sending me something early in the morning, and I have started calling her my rooster. So everyone has a different little gift and that God has given us. So I just want to remind you to be a good steward of your gifts, and don't, if it's something you're really good at, don't be arrogant about it. Realize that God gave it to you and He can take it away if you don't use it for Him. So be cautious to use that for Him. Also, your possessions. So let's just say you make a lot of money and you have a beach house and you have a friend and her husband's lost his job, and or you, either way, whether you're a boy or a girl, you know what I mean. You have a friend and one of them has lost their job, and that summer they're not going to get to go on a vacation, and you're thinking, well, they might not take care of it the way I do. What if they don't leave it clean enough? Oh, that'd be a lot of work for me to have to get on there and clean up after them. I don't know whether I'll let them borrow it or not. Think about things like that and say, well, you know what? God has blessed me with this, and they deserve a vacation. So let me share that. That would be a possession, sharing your possession. And I know that a lot of us may not ever own a beach house. So let's bring that down a couple notches and say, okay, a steward of, let's just say you had a friend and they had surgery, and you could make a meal for them, or maybe you're busy and you could pick up takeout and take it to them. That would be, stewardship in a certain fashion. Now let's talk about tithing. We have talked about that some, and that is giving 10%. Tithe, Tithe, means 10%. So if you are mowing your neighbor's yard and you make $10, then that means you would give $1 to the tithe, which would, it would be a tenth, and you would take that to your church. Now, you also hear about offerings, and like maybe you listen to K-Love and maybe you love it, and I don't think they're going to do the spring pledge drive, but they'll probably do one in the fall or when things get better from the coronavirus. And maybe God really lays it on your heart to give, I don't know, maybe you're going to give $2 a month or something, I don't know, $5 a month. And you give that every month. That really makes a difference. And that would be an offering. An offering is over and beyond your 10%. And the way I've read it, the 10% should always go to like your local church to support. And then your offerings, sometimes you might give extra offering to your church for a building fund or to feed the needy or some special project. Like maybe they're going to help buy a vehicle for a missionary that lives in Haiti or something. We've had some things like that in our church. That would be your over and beyond, like your offering. But I found that when I was a little girl, my parents tithed and they taught me to tithe, and I'm very, very thankful. I have a friend, and she was my friend in high school and in elementary school, and she's still my friend today. And I don't know where she is with tithing at this very moment, but when we had this conversation a few years ago, she said that, growing up, she didn't go to church. And when she first got married, she didn't realize the value of tithing. They purchased a house, they purchased vehicles, and they kind of set their finances up based on the money that they made. And there were times she'd talk to me about tithing, and she would say, we just don't have the money to tithe. And I would encourage her to trust God, and that we can live off of 90% that God blesses more than we can 100% that we are not giving over to Him. And my friend, who I love dearly, has had a lot of financial problems in her life. And I really think if she would have trusted God more with her finances, and I can't say that I blame her because she didn't grow up, trusting God with her finances. She didn't see that played out with her parents. So, but over the years, I have kind of watched that, and I thought it is so important that we honor God with our money. I have a really cute story. Our pastor and his wife had just gotten married, and this was before he became a pastor, but I think he was going to seminary school. And he had put cash in an envelope instead of a check. And that day when they were getting ready for church, he said, Jenny, we're not going to have enough money for our Duke Energy bill this week. And he said, if we take our tithe, he said, I'm going to have to take our tithe back out. And she went in there and took the envelope, and she ripped it two ways. She ripped it, and then she ripped it sideways, like that, and laid it down. And she said, God doesn't need your money anyway. And he said that he learned the biggest lesson. He said he went and got tape, and he was taping that cash together and stuck it in a new envelope and took it to church. And he said that very week that God provided for that Duke Energy bill. So he has story after story after story of how God provided, and it's very, very exciting. So let's go back. I kind of did an overview of this week, but let's go back for just a minute and finish our discussion for today. So our discussion for today goes back now to Genesis 1:28. And who knows where Genesis is in the Bible? The very first book. You got it. Okay. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish and the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. And again, that's Genesis 1:8. And what does the word subdue mean? Let's read that again. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Subdue basically means like to bring it under your control. So he was instructing Adam and us that the earth is under our control. We are stewards of it, but we don't own it. So let me try to give an example. Okay, so ownership. Ownership means that you possess something. Like your mom and dad own their house. Your mom and dad own their car. You own your go-kart, or you own your golf cart, or you own your bicycle, or you own your, I don't know, baby dolls in your room. You're the owner, okay? Well, let's pretend a friend comes over and you let your friend ride your bicycle. Then your friend is then a steward of that. They kind of are in control of that bicycle for a little bit, but it's not theirs. So they need to take really, really good care of that bicycle when they're riding it, because it's not theirs, it's yours. And they need to do the very best by it while it's under their care. And that's the way the earth is with us. So let's go over to, okay, I want to read a couple things to you for review. What is a steward? Does anybody know? Think about it. Okay, I said a minute ago that an owner is someone who possesses something. They own it. A steward is someone who manages and cares for someone else's property, or it's in their care at that moment. Okay, what is stewardship? The management and care of someone else's property. Who is the creator and owner of the earth? God, yes. How are people stewards over God's creation? Think about that a minute. How are people stewards over God's creation? God's the owner, we are stewards. It says God entrusts the earth to people. They are supposed to manage what's in it, but we do not own it. What does God expect of his stewards? He entrusts that his people will use his possessions responsibly. So I just want to encourage you to think about that and ways that you can be careful with God's creation. Like maybe there's a bug in the house that you decide you're going to throw outside instead of stomp. Maybe you don't throw that trash out the window when you're riding down the road. I'm trying to think of other little things. Maybe instead of throwing that water bottle in the trash, you'll throw that water bottle in recycling, and think of ways that you can make the world better as we continue just to be stewards of it, not really owners of it. I hope that you guys had a great Easter. I hope you're having a happy Monday. And I wanted to remind you this week's Bible verse is Matthew 6:19. And if you can try to say it a few times every day, and then we'll have a day that we write it, if you'll work on memorization. Remember, this week we're starting things and we're doing things differently. I was advised by Mrs. Thompson mid last week that we were going to change some things. So for Bible, I really want you to watch the videos, and like today, do page 109. But please do not worry about sending me anything back. You don't have to send today 109. You won't have to send tomorrow 110. You won't have to send Wednesday 111 or Thursday 112. You won't have to send the Bible verses on Friday. They are just trusting that you're doing this at home. And that will save. Some people don't have that great of service right now. Things are not coming back to us. But we are going to require in math no workbook pages, no speed drills, no multiplication quizzes. The only thing you're going to have the last 6 weeks in math are quizzes and tests. And those, of course, will be returned to me, if possible, through LMS, because they really would prefer having record of those. And if they come through email or on my text, I have to delete those. So I hope that you'll be able to upload those to LMS for me. And again, it's just the tests, front and back, and the quizzes when we have those. I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.